The Falcon Heavy rocket launched from Launch Complex 39 at Kennedy Space Center on November 1st with classified U.S. Space Force payloads into geostationary orbit. The mission, dubbed USSF-44, was the vehicle's first national security space launch mission since 2018. The Falcon Heavy is basically 3 Falcon 9 boosters strapped together with 27 Merlin engines. It was the vehicle's 4th flight since 2018. You are watching your YouTube channel Luxury, Luxurious and Lifestyle. In today's video, we are going to discuss all the latest updates regarding Starship survived 5 critical tests, orbital launch timeline, and future missions. So, make sure to watch the video till the end, and if you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe to the channel and hit the bell icon, so you won't miss any future videos we upload. A gray band was used on the 2nd stage of the USSF-44 mission to absorb heat from the sun during the prolonged coasting period and warm the fuel tank. After liftoff, the fuel becomes viscous and slushy when consumed. If consumed, the slushy fuel would likely prevent ignition or destroy the upper stage's Merlin engines. When the vehicle's side boosters separated, they performed synchronized boost backburns to return to Earth. Both boosters landed about 8.5 minutes after liftoff at SpaceX landing zones 1 and 2, marking the company's 150th and 151st successful recoveries. Just over 4 minutes after launch, the rocket's core stage separated from the 2nd stage and was jettisoned. It appears the stage center core was destroyed when it re-entered Earth's atmosphere because the mission's performance requirements did not allow enough fuel to return and land it back on a drone ship. The mission carried 2 main payloads into 36 0-kilometer geostationary orbit: a classified satellite dubbed the Shepherd, and a propulsive ESPA spacecraft bus carrying 6 payloads. Due to the classified nature of the mission, the webcast ended before the payload separated from the upper stage. Space Systems Command tweeted Tuesday evening that the mission had succeeded and that the payloads had entered their designated orbits. The next Falcon Heavy mission is scheduled for January 4, 2023. Both VSS-83 and Arcturus satellites will deliver high-speed satellite broadband services during. After the USSF-44 mission, SpaceX launched its 51st rocket of the year with a Falcon 9 rocket, launching the Hotbird 13-gram satellite into geostationary transfer orbit 2 days later. It was the 7th launch and landing for this booster. It returned to Earth less than 9 minutes later, landing on a drone ship in the Atlantic Ocean. About 36 minutes after liftoff, Hotbird 13 grams continued to sit atop Falcon 9's upper stage, where it was deployed into geosynchronous transfer orbit. Within the next few months, the satellite will use its electric propulsion to reach 36 0-kilometers geostationary orbit, joining its twin, the Hotbird 13F satellite launched in October by another Falcon rocket. The Hotbird satellite family forms one of the largest broadcasting systems in Europe, delivering 1,000 television channels to more than 160 million TV homes in Europe, North Africa, and the Middle East. On November 8, Falcon 9 will carry Galaxy 31 and Galaxy 32 satellites into orbit. On October 31st, China's 3rd and final lab module docked with Tianzhong Space Station, completing construction of its crewed orbital outpost. Almost 13 hours after launch, the module docked with the front port of the Tianzhong Space Station, orbiting the Earth at an altitude of about 380 kilometers after being launched with a Long March 5B rocket from the Wenzhou Satellite Launch Center on October 31st. A crew of 3 astronauts from the Shenzhou 40 mission watched events from the 23 0-kilogram space station. Mention has a length of 17.9 meters and diameter of 4.2 meters and will contain an airlock for exposure to space vacuum, as well as a robotic arm for supporting extravehicular payloads. Solar arrays on the outside of the service module are flexible and deployable. Hours after docking, the mentioned module was relocated to its permanent position, and the 3 modules Tianco Wenyan and Menyan formed the. During April 2021, the station's core module, called Tianco, entered space. China launched the Wenyan Lab module in July, which docked with the core module. Tianzhong, meaning palace in the sky, is now one of 2 space stations orbiting Earth, the other being the International Space Station. Jiangling has a mass of about 100 kilograms. China plans to build China plans to launch a powerful survey telescope named Shuntian as early as late 2023 to keep Changzhou occupied for at least 10 years doing science experiments and eventually hosting foreign astronauts. The 21-time core stage of Long March 5B rocket that launched Mentian into orbit tumbled back to Earth on Friday, while China celebrates the successful launch of Minyan. U.S. Space Command confirmed pieces of the rocket splashed down into areas of the Pacific Ocean early Friday morning during an uncontrolled re-entry. NASA Administrator Bill Nelson called the re-entry unnecessary. The Chinese rocket debris landed on Earth 4 times since May 2020, but no one was injured in those incidents. During the last rollback to the Vehicle Assembly Building on September 26 to shelter from Hurricane Ian, NASA rolled out the Space Launch System rocket and the Orion spacecraft to Kennedy Space Center Launch Complex 39B on November 4th. Testing of the reaction control system on the solid rocket boosters and installation of the flight batteries has been completed. In addition to replacing the batteries on the interim cryogenic propulsion stage, engineers have also carried out minor repairs identified through detailed inspections. NASA has secured backup launch dates of November 16th and 19th. Artemis 1 will launch from Pad 39B on November 14th at 507 am UTC during a 69-minute launch window that opens at 507 am UTC. If the vehicle doesn't launch by November 19th, there is an opportunity for a fourth attempt on November 25th, but it would require discussions with the FAA. Let's take a look at some of the major Starship updates over the past week. On Monday, October 31st, SpaceX resumed the full-stack cryo-proof test by filling the oxygen tank of Booster 7 with subcooled liquid nitrogen. When the Starship Quick Disconnect mechanism was disconnected and reconnected to Ship 24, cryo-fluid leaked through the ports during the test, mimicking the retraction of the QD arm in a rocket just after ignition and right before liftoff. The tank filling and draining operation took about 100 minutes on November 1st. Starship 25 has been standing atop suborbital. Over the past 2 weeks, PATA has undergone the first cryo-proof test for Ship 25. Subcooled liquid nitrogen was pumped into the oxygen tank during the test, causing frequent venting of cryo fluid. 2 hours after the frost first appeared on the oxygen tank, SpaceX began filling the ship's methane tank with subcooled liquid nitrogen. Nearly 25% of the tank's capacity was filled, approximately 50 tons of liquid nitrogen. It was observed during Tuesday's test that the header tanks were filled with liquid nitrogen as well. The Ship 25 propellant tank filling and draining operation took more than 4 hours. The ship's cryoproof testing resumed on Wednesday morning, and it was the longest cryoproof test ever conducted at Starbase. At 11:40 am local time, liquid nitrogen was first added to the oxygen tank. After being completely filled in 2 hours, the tank was kept in that condition for 1.5 hours, while the 6 hydraulic rams under the pad mechanically stressed the ship's thrust structure to simulate the thrust of 6 Raptor engines. Ice was seen falling from the ship around 3:15 p.m. local time. Within 30 minutes, half of the tank had been filled with liquid nitrogen. Last week's test campaign ended with a full-stack cryoproof test on November 3rd after the methane and oxygen tanks were slowly drained. The methane tanks of Ship 24 and Booster 7 were filled with liquid nitrogen on Thursday afternoon. Ship 24's tank had 25% of its capacity filled, and Booster 7's tank had 50%. It took about 100 minutes for SpaceX to fill and empty the tank during the test. Later, the oxygen tanks of both prototypes were filled with liquid nitrogen. During the test, Ship 24's oxygen tank was filled to 25% of its capacity and Booster 7's oxygen tank to 50%. The road closure notice indicates that full stack and Ship 25 tests will resume next. That's all for today's video, guys. What do you think of today's video? Tell us your views in the comment section. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. See you in the next video. Until then, cheers!